On the evening of the 19th of July 2006 in a team hotel in the French Alps, a man that started that morning as the leader of the Tour de France sat down and he ordered himself a large whiskey. Floyd Landis had just cracked. On the final climb to Le Tousier, he'd gone from race leader to a broken man in the space of an hour. And by the finish, he dropped from first place in the Tour de France to 11th, more than 8 minutes behind the leader. Every commentator, every article, L'Équipe, every rival, every director in the race convoy said the same thing that night. Landis is done. The story Landis has told ever since is that he stopped caring, that he ordered a beer, then he ordered something a little bit stronger than a beer, and he slept properly for the first time without pressure in weeks. The next morning, he attacked with roughly 130 kilometres still to go. He rode alone over 5 Alpine passes in a heat wave, pouring water over his head almost the entire way, and he won the stage solo by 5 minutes and 42 seconds. The race director called it the best performance in the modern history of the Tour de France. 3 days later, Floyd Landis stood resplendent on the Champs-Élysées in the yellow jersey as the winner of the Tour de France. And then, you know what happened next. The positive test, the strip title, the disgrace. That is where the story usually ends, and it's exactly where this one starts to get interesting. Because the Floyd Landis sample that he gave on Morzine that afternoon, it didn't just end his own career, it started a chain reaction that took 6 years to fully explode. And when it finally did, it took down the biggest name in the history of the sport, Lance Armstrong. So over the next few minutes, I want to show you 3 things. Let's go back and look at that ride itself because it's iconic and I want to tell it properly. Then look at the machinery underneath it, which is not what the highlight reel tells you. It's often skipped. And then why 1 cup of urine collected on the 12th of July 2006 changed professional sport more than any other drug test ever taken. To understand what this ride meant, you have to remember what the summer of 2006 felt like. Lance Armstrong had just retired the year before, having won 7 straight Tour de France's. 2 days before the start, Operation Puerto doping investigation, it exploded all over the newspapers, particularly in Spain, and the 2 favourites for the Tour de France heading into it, Jan Ullrich and Ivan Basso, were pulled from the race even before the Tour de France had kicked off. Cycling was desperate for a clean race, for an open race, for a believable, for a likeable tour. And for 2 weeks, that's exactly what we got. We were glued to the screens. Floyd Landis, he was the strongest man in the race. He was the hero we needed. He was a former mountain biker raised in a Mennonite community in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. His backstory is brilliant. He was riding for a Swiss team, Phonak, and he was racing on a hip that was so badly damaged from an old crash that the bone, we were led to believe, was dying, and he needed surgery that could end his career after the Tour de France. He took the yellow jersey in the Pyrenees and then he let it go as a disciple of Johan Brunel would. He let it go to a breakaway to spare his team the work of defending it for the non-key stages, and then he took it back on the most iconic of climbs, Alpe d'Huez. He started stage 16, leading the Tour by 10 seconds, and the last climb of the day, boom, lights went out. If you've ever properly bonked, you know what that feels like. You know what that looks like from the outside. The shoulders start rocking, you lose the cadence, and the speed just drains away no matter what you do. It's too late to eat. It's game over. Landis lost over 8 minutes on that one climb. Riders he'd been dropping for 2 weeks, they came past him like he was standing still. He rolled in 11th overall, 8 minutes and 8 seconds behind the new Tour de France leader, Oscar Pereiro. 10 riders now stood between him and the yellow jersey, and 1 real mountain stage only remained in the race. L'Équipe, they wrote his obituary that evening. And Landis went back to the hotel and, despondent, he sat down and he ordered himself a beer. And then the story goes, he ordered another beer and then a whiskey. That night, around the dinner table, his team then sketched a plan that made absolutely no sense. Attack from the very first climb of the next stage, with almost an entire day still left to race. Not because anyone around that table or anyone in the team believed that they could win the Tour de France, they just wanted to make the race brutal. Like the last sting of a dying wasp, and see who broke, to cause chaos. Stage 17, it ran over 200 kilometres, from Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne to Morzine, over 5 climbs, on a day so hot, I still remember the tarmac that was melting on the descents. On the first climb to the Col de Sassis, with roughly 130 kilometres still to go, boom, Landis attacked, and the peloton let him ride away. Up the road, He rode straight across to an 11-man breakaway. That was the day's early escape. Landis rode straight to it, straight through it, out the far side, one rider at a time. By the Valley Roads, his lead over the yellow jersey group, it stretched towards 9 minutes, which on the road made him the new leader of the Tour de France. And this is where the day turned into something people still argue about 20 years later. His team car, it sat just behind him for the duration of the day, for hours, and it was passing him up bottle after bottle of water, like every couple of minutes. Some of the water he drank, but most of that water, he tipped it straight over his head, down his back. He'd created this rolling cooling system on a day when every other contender in the Tour de France was slowly cooking behind with restricted access to fluids. Behind him, that chase, they never properly organised. Over the Col d'Arives, over the Col de Colombier, past Shackleton, the gap stopped shrinking. Landis said afterwards that when the time check stopped moving, he knew the group behind was already riding flat out. On the final climb to Le Plan, one of the most feared ascents in Tour de France history, the favourites finally attacked each other, but it changed almost nothing. Landis crossed the line in Morzine alone, 5 minutes and 42 seconds ahead of Carlos Sastre, and he swung a big right hook into the air, triumphant. In one afternoon, he'd taken back nearly 7.5 minutes on Pereiro. Jean-Marie Leblanc, the race director and the man who'd watched every Tour de France for decades, called it the finest ride of the modern era. A day after Landis was written off completely. Carlos Sastre, well, he was maybe the first one that seemed a little bit sceptical. He put it a lot more simply. In the final kilometres, 5 riders had attacked each other, and together Landis was still better than the 5 of us. That maybe in retrospect was alarm bells. Landis now moved himself up to 3rd overall, 30 seconds down, with 57-kilometre time trial still to come, and everybody in the peloton knew that Landis was the best man against the clock. He beat Pereiro in the time trial by around 1.5 minutes, and he took back the yellow jersey, which he rode into Paris on the 23rd of July as a winner of the Tour de France by 57 seconds. An American flag was raised on the Champs-Élysées 1 year after Lance Armstrong had walked away from the sport. Now hold on to the date of that ride, because that is important and we're going to come back to it. 12th of July. It matters more than any other date in this story. Now let me break down what actually happened out on the road, because this is the part that the highlight reel gets wrong. The first mechanism, it was pure racecraft. There's nothing nefarious here. When Landis attacked, he was almost 8 minutes down, and chasing a man that far back, it just burns unnecessary energy for a team. Pereiro's Case the Band team, they had the jersey, so the chase was their responsibility, and nobody was going to come to help them. Strategically, that didn't make sense. CSC had Carlos Sastre sitting 12 seconds off the yellow. There was still a time trial coming. Pereiro, not a super time trialist, so burning his teammates made no sense for him. T-Mobile had Cloden. He was in a nearly identical position. Every team made the individually sensible choice to sit tight, but Case the Band just didn't have the firepower. So collectively, when you look at the culmination of all those decisions, the effect handed Floyd Landis the Tour de France. By the time the favourites started actually racing each other and a bit of organisation came, it was on the due plan, and the arithmetic was already done at that point. There was no miracle in that part of the story, just solid racecraft, good game theory playing out at race speed in a heatwave. Now, let's hold on to that heatwave part, because the second mechanism is that, the heat itself. Landis's training advisor was physiologist Alan Lim, who I've had on the podcast. And the cooling plan is the detail of that day that fascinates me most. While the chasers, they fought for bottles inside of the group, sending back domestiques if they still had them on a hard mountain stage to go back to the car and hand bottles up. Landis had a team car all to himself, and he used it to run water over his body almost continuously for hours. Core temperature, I've done podcast after podcast on this, it's the new aerodynamic for me. We're going to see a huge wave in cooling in the next 5 to 10 years. It's one of the great hidden limits in cycling. Once it climbs past a certain point, your brain starts pulling power down. Whether you agree to or not, your wattage drops off. Riding alone with his own private supply line of cool water, Landis could manage that limit in a way nobody chasing him could. And here's where it gets really interesting. After the Tour, Alan Lim released Floyd Landis's actual power numbers from the stage. On the climbs, he was riding at roughly 370 to 390 watts, which at his race weight works out at somewhere between 5.5 to 5.8 watts per kilo. Now, I know if you're watching this and you train 6 hours a week, these are enormous numbers, especially for someone to sustain over a 4-hour solo ride. But I promise you, these are not alien numbers at the top level of pro cycling. Riders have produced comparable climbing figures in Grand Tours since, and plenty of analysis have pointed out that the files look less like a superhuman transformation and more like a very good, maybe generational talent having a brilliant day in perfect tactical circumstances. Then there's the strangest part of this entire story. Testosterone, it doesn't work like a light switch. It's not an amphetamine that gives you this instant boost. You stick a testosterone patch on tonight, you're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and stick 5 minutes into the best climbers in the world. It doesn't supercharge your legs. Like, doping experts have sat across from me here on the podcast, and they've since written articles about this, and they've said as much of this. The anti-doping case never actually claimed that the drug powered the ride. That's important. The case turned on one question only. In that era, testosterone was mainly a recovery drug, taken in small doses to help riders absorb impossible training workloads night after night. So the real question was never whether stage 17 was fueled by illegal doping that morning. The real question was what the entire comeback was fueled on, and the entire era around it had been built on. So when Landis's confession finally came years later, it left one very strange loose thread hanging, which we're going to come to. 4 days after Paris, on the 27th of July, Phonak announced that Landis's A sample from stage 17 had come back abnormal. The screening tests measured the ratio of testosterone related to a hormone called epitestosterone. The legal limit was 4-1. Landis's sample, it was roughly 11-1. Now, he denied absolutely everything, and the early explanations came out like a scramble, if everyone remembers these. It was weird. He first blamed the whiskey the night before, then it was cortisone injections for that dying hip, then it was a thyroid medication, then it was his own body's natural chemistry. What stood out for me about the new POC Amidal is that POC haven't just made another cycling helmet. They've brought together aerodynamic performance, cooling, visibility, and the safety thinking that they're known for into something that looks sleek and feels properly designed for real-world riding. I've trusted POC helmets for years, and honestly, they've made a difference to me on more occasions than I care to remember. So with the Amidal, what I like is that same focus on protection, but in a helmet that's built for fast road riding too. But the really clever detail is the integrated rear nog light. POC and Nog have developed a bespoke light specifically for this helmet, and honestly it just makes so much sense. Because visibility is one of the biggest safety factors for anyone riding on open roads, especially early morning riding, winter training blocks, or busy urban riding. Having a light integrated into the helmet means you're more noticeable to traffic from higher up in the driver's eye line. I never head out for a training ride without a rear light. It's just become a non-negotiable for me. And with the Amidal, POC have integrated one in a way that feels clean, practical, and genuinely useful. Head over to POC.com, that's POC.com, and have a look at the new Amidal. The French laboratory, however, they ran a deeper test, a carbon isotope analysis, which can tell whether the testosterone in the sample was made by a human body or whether it was made in a factory. On the 5th of August, the B sample confirmed it. Synthetic testosterone. Phonak fired Landis that same day, and the lab's directors told reporters that no error was possible in that isotope reading. The Tour's new director, Christine Prudhomme, said Landis had soiled the yellow jersey. Floyd Landis became the first winner in 103 years of the Tour de France to lose a title over a doping offence. The 2006 title eventually passed to Oscar Pereiro, and if you've seen our Armstrong episode, which I'll link below, you will know why the details matter. 2006 was given to a new winner, while the 7 years before it, they were left permanently blank. Now, here's the part of this story that I think you will feel more than any other part of this story. Landis did not confess. He fought, and he asked ordinary cycling fans to pay for the fight. I donated as a student to this. In 2007, he set up something called the Floyd Fairness Fund. He ran town hall meetings across America. He published a book called Positively False and stood in front of rooms of people like you and me insisting he was clean. I was the strongest man on the Tour de France, he said, and that, he insisted, was the whole explanation. Nothing more to see. 1,765 people donated to the Floyd Fairness Fund. The fund raised over $1 million, and by his later account, the legal war ended up costing more than $2 million. And to be fair to the defence, that's not nonsense. That's like probably what it would cost. The arbitration panel that heard the case in 2007 accepted that the French lab's procedures and paperwork, they had some problems, and that one of the three arbitrators actually sided with Landis outright. But the other two ruled that the carbon isotope findings survived every criticism thrown at them. And in September 2007, Landis lost 2 votes to 1. The title was gone and the ban was 2 years. He appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and in June 2008, he lost again, 3 votes to 0, with an order to pay $100,000 towards the other side's costs. A French court later handed him a suspended sentence for his part in a scheme to hack the computers of the very laboratory that had tested him. This just gets wild. By 2009, Floyd Landis, he was banned, he was broke, and he was finished in the sport in every way that mattered. Then in the spring of 2010, that's when the emails came. Did he have another whiskey that night? I don't know. Who knows? I like to think he did. I like to think he was penning these emails after a few Jack Daniels that night. Between late April and early May, Landis wrote to the head of the United States Cycling and other officials and sponsors, and he laid it all out. The EPO, the blood transfusions, the growth hormone, the testosterone patches, the entire internal machinery of the US Postal Services team. Names, years, methods, everything. He implicated dozens of riders, and above all of them, Lance Armstrong. I want to clear my conscience. That's what he told ESPN when the story broke. And buried inside that confession was the loose thread I promised you. Landis admitted to doping throughout his entire career, including the 2006 Tour itself. But he maintained from that day to this day that he did not use testosterone before stage 17. He confessed to almost everything, but still disputes the one test that destroyed him. Now make it out what you will. The emails triggered a federal criminal investigation into Armstrong's team. That investigation closed in early 2012 without charges. But the United States Anti-Doping Agency took that evidence and they ran with it. In October 2012, USADA published a reasoned decision, built on sworn testimony from 11 former teammates, and Landis' name runs all the way through it. Armstrong lost all 7 Tour de France's off the back of this, and he was handed a lifetime ban from sport. 3 months later, he sits down in front of Oprah Winfrey and he answers all those yes or no questions we remember.
Yes or no? Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Let me tell you about AG1 who are supporting today's episode. You all know my thing. Consistency beats intensity every time. It's the small things you do every single day that add up. And that goes for what you put into your body too. For me, one of those is AG1. It's a daily core supplement blend. A broad range of micronutrients including vitamins, minerals and bacterial cultures for your gut. All in one scoop. Think of it as the supplements I'd be taking anyway, blended into one. I have it first thing in the morning, same as my coffee, whether I'm home or I'm living out of a kit bag at a race. One scoop, once a day, and I don't think about it again. So if you want to build that habit, head to drinkag1.com/roadmancycling to claim an amazing offer. It's €20 off your first month, a free welcome kit, 5 free travel packs, and vitamin D3 and K2. That link again, that's drinkag1.com/roadmancycling. I'm going to put the link in the description below. There's an exclusive offer for all our listeners. And there was still one more move in play though. Back in June 2010, only weeks after the emails, Landis had quietly filed a lawsuit under seal in Washington. It's called a whistleblower lawsuit, a case under the False Claims Act, arguing that Armstrong's team had defrauded the American government and the taxpayer because US Postal Services paid roughly $32 million to sponsor a team that was cheating the entire time. After the Oprah Winfrey confession, the US government joined this case. And in April 2018, with a trial weeks away, Armstrong settled for $5 million. And the whistleblower who started all of this? Floyd Landis. He received $1.1 million. Now, here's the detail I couldn't get out of my head while researching for this podcast. In 2012, Landis had signed a deferred prosecution agreement with federal prosecutors, admitting that he defrauded those people that donated, 1,765 people that donated to the Floyd Fairness Fund. But to be fair to Floyd, he did commit to repaying them all. $478,000 he committed to repaying. His quote at the time was, "I can never undo having lied to people." That was on the courtroom steps. He did pay the donors back, and by his own account and by recent reporting, money from that Armstrong settlement helped to close out what was owed. The fans who paid for the lie, they were repaid in part by the man the lie eventually brought down. Now follow the chain one more time, because this is my read on what that one sample, on why that one sample matters more than any other in the history of sport. But I want to be clear that this is just my read. Circle back to the positive test in Morzine. No positive test means no disgraced Floyd Landis. No disgraced Floyd Landis means no emails in 2010. No emails mean no federal investigation, no reasoned decision, and in all likelihood, Lance Armstrong retires quietly, forever a 7-time Tour de France champion. Now, you can argue that the truth was coming anyway, that a lie this big can't be contained, and maybe that was the case. Maybe that David Walsh or a handful of those other investigative journalists that had been chasing for a decade, maybe they would have brought it down. But the chain that actually happened, the one written down in the court documents and in arbitration, starts with a cup of urine collected in Morzine on the 12th of July 2006. The most famous fake ride in cycling history became the most consequential positive test the sport has ever seen. So where's Floyd Landis now? He lives in Colorado. In 2016, he founded Floyd's of Leadville, a cannabis and CBD company, a business that traces back to the painkiller addiction that followed his hip operations. For a while, money from the Armstrong settlement even bankrolled a professional cycling team racing under Floyd's name. He turned 50 last October, and in a recent interview, he described cycling as an era, as a catastrophe waiting to happen, and he compared blaming him for what happened to the sport to blaming a tree for when a car drives into it. Whether you accept this, well, that's entirely up to you. 20 years after Morzine, Floyd, he rides a bike, now just for fun. Thanks for tuning in, folks. That Armstrong podcast I spoke about, that's linked down below. Definitely worth checking out. Take a second, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment. Let me know if you were a Floyd fan back in the day, because I was, and I got burnt bad. Until next time.